Hey, yo, what's going on, everybody? Back with another video. We coming at you with the top 15 quarterback rankings today. Pretty straightforward stuff here. The only thing I'd really say is that these rankings aren't specified for like 4-point per passing touchdown or 6-point per passing touchdown. I actually played in a lot of 5-point leagues, so these honestly are kind of just general rankings that I apply to any league that I'm in and kind of just adjust accordingly as it goes. Obviously, with 4-point per passing touchdown quarterback leagues, you're going to want people that rush more, and then vice versa when you got 6 points. Pretty straightforward stuff. I also don't really play in many super flex leagues, so I view the quarterback position a little bit differently since I'm normally taking them late. So the top end guys I don't really care about that much because they'll never really end up on my team. It's just how I draft quarterback. I think the people around like the 8 to 12 range point differential is not going to be that different from the top quarterback, whereas the people that you would be missing out in running back and wide receiver at that 4th, 5th round, whatever, when you'd be getting like Josh Allen and all those guys, those wide receivers and running back can be super valuable for your team, and that point differential is a massive difference. So I tend to take quarterbacks later in the draft and just kind of take whoever follows to me, but you can get a ton of positional advantage if you strike on somebody late too. So that's kind of my strategy, but we're going to go through all the ranking. We'll roll the intro and let's get into it. First up, pretty obvious, we got Josh Allen. He's been the back-to-back quarter one the past 2 years, and he pretty much has the same offense. They had the 3rd most points as an offense last year. He has a perfect athletic combination for a fantasy quarterback where he has a cannon of an arm and can throw for 40 touchdowns, but can also rush like 10 touchdowns. I mean, he won't do that exactly, obviously. That's ridiculous, but in that realm where, he's going to get 6 to 8 touchdowns almost every single year and be close to that 35, 40. Didn't really lose anybody on his team. I think Gabriel Davis has a really good chance of taking the next step this year. Added in James Cook, who's a good receiving running back, and the entire offense runs through him, so there's really not much to say. Pretty easy, locked in quarterback one this year, Josh Allen. After that, we got Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. He was a quarterback 2 in fantasy points per game last year, had the 3rd most passing yards and the 2nd most passing touchdowns last year. The Chargers also have the fastest pace of play. He just gets a ton of opportunity. He has the most touchdowns ever as a rookie for a quarterback, and then also the most touchdowns ever through the first 2 years, and likely going to break that record again in 3rd year. So just an elite young talent that is still getting way better, has a bunch of good weapons, and has a head coach that loves to go for it and loves to push the pace and push everything. So I want as many pieces of that offense that you can get, and he is the catalyst to it all. So quarterback 2 with not too many question marks here. I will take Justin Herbert every single time right there. And the next person I have in this same tier of the top end quarterbacks is Patrick Mahomes. He would be ranked higher, but obviously he lost Tyreek Hill, and everyone said that he kind of had a down year last year, but he still finished 5th in fantasy points per game for a quarterback. So if that's the down year for my quarterback, then I will take that in the top 3 every single time. He also had the 4th most passing touchdowns and the 4th most passing yards last year, just showing that, he's still one of the best talents in the NFL at quarterback. And he also, I guess he got Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, but that's not going to replace Tyreek, obviously. But he also drafted Sky Moore and signed Justin Ross as rookies, so they're trying to put the talent around them so we can still have the weapons. Obviously, it's not going to make up for Tyreek Hill, but the weapons are still there. Travis Kelce is still there. He's still going to be good no matter what. He only played like 5 games without him, and he's averaged over like 300 yards, but it's not a sample size big enough. He hasn't played in a game without Tyreek since 2019, so there's not really much data to go off there. So I'm going to trust the talent and the coaching around him and all of that. So Patrick Mahomes, the last person in the top tier. So my next tier, at my quarterback 4, I got Lamar Jackson. This offseason, he honestly became one of my favorite characters in the NFL, just absolutely eviscerating Bernard Pollard on Twitter. That shit was so funny. And not to mention, he's an absolute dog. He's another person who everyone said that he had a bad year last year, but he still was 2nd in the league in rushing yards for quarterback, which we know how valuable that is in fantasy football. There was also one game this year where he didn't play majority of the snaps. It was literally one game where he only played 14% of the snaps. If you remove that game, he averaged 22.89 points per game, which would have been the quarterback 3 in fantasy points per game this past year. So literally the one game where he basically didn't play and it just completely takes down his average is the reason that his points per game right now doesn't show up in the same categories as other guys. But he's going to have all of his weapons. Not going to have Hollywood back, but he's going to have his run game back. And I think that the run game will open everything up for him. He's going to have JK back. He's going to have Gus Edwards back. All those guys are going to open everything up for the rest of the offense. And I think Lamar Jackson is going to have another elite year. We could still see those flashes of just unrealness. He's one of the most exciting players in the NFL style to watch when he's playing good. I'm also a big Rashad Bateman fan. I think he's going to take a step forward, still as Mark Andrews, and he's trying to prove himself so he can get paid that Deshaun Watson contract. So yeah, give me him at the quarterback 4. Moving on to my quarterback 5, I have Kyler Murray, who he just got paid the other day. He finished last year as a quarterback 10, but was actually the quarterback 4 in fantasy points per game. So on a per game basis, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And they actually got Hollywood this year, but they're going to be without D-Hop for at least the first 6 games. You know, he's appealing that suspension. We'll see what happens with that. But right now, I'm kind of just assuming he's going to miss 6 games. But once he comes back, then he's going to have an absolutely elite wide receiver core, and I think that they'll be able to manage for the beginning of the season. He also had the 4th most rushing attempts and rushing yards for a quarterback last year, and it felt like last year he really took a step back in the amount of attempts that he was doing. So if he can kind of get back to actually rushing a lot, you know, he can finish at quarterback 1. The first, I should have looked it up before this, but the first 6 weeks of the season last year, he was easily on pace for the quarterback 1, and I think it's a very likely chance that one of these years he's going to put it all together and just dominate from beginning of the year to the end of the year. Now, will it be this year? Who knows? Because D-Hop's really only getting older, so it's hard to know. But I think quarterback 5 is a good place to have him, given his upside and, you know, his floor, given his rushing ability. Quarterback 5 is where I'm going to have him, because I think he's a little bit more upside, honestly, than the next person, even though I love the next guy way more, who is Joe Burrow, Joe Shiesty. Before he even went on his huge run, I love this man. He won me a fantasy football championship in a dynasty league last year when my team was absolute garbage. Him and John Taylor absolutely carried me. Now, he didn't have a great finish overall last year, but throughout the second half of the year, he was the quarterback 3, and to end the playoffs, he was the quarterback 1 in back-to-back weeks. Also, one of the biggest stories of the offseason is them improving their offensive line. It's significantly better now with Alex Kappa, Leo Collins, Ted Karras, all these guys. Their offensive line is going to be one of the top 10 in the league probably this year, and that was the big issue with them last year. We've seen what he can do. You know, took the Bengals all the way to the Super Bowl, still going to have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, who are super young. They're just developing more and more together. There's no reason for him not to continue the way he has been. You know, he doesn't have the same rushing upside as these other guys, which is why he's not in the same category, and he hasn't really proved it to us yet that he can do it for an extended period of time. I mean, I guess, you know, you proved it in the playoffs, into the Super Bowl, fuck it, yeah, I guess you proved it to me on a fantasy basis is what I mean. He hasn't shown it for an entire season, but I definitely think he can, so I'm going to take him right here. Joe Burrow, my man, quarterback 6 this year for me. I don't know if y'all can hear this. There's somebody screaming outside my apartment. I'm fucking bad if it is. Anyways, quarterback 7, Jalen Hurts. He actually had the most rushing yards last year of any quarterback. I mean, it's just a huge advantage. It gives you a super safe floor every single week and a ton of upside. But every single year last year, he had a terrible game going into the 4th quarter and would score 2 rushing touchdowns, which is honestly terrifying because it doesn't seem like it can be super reliable, but it kept happening. And they also added AJ Brown this year, which is just giving him all the weapons he could ask for. So if he can't make it this year, he's probably not going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. But with his rushing upside and the weapons that he does have, there's so much potential here that it's impossible not to let him go any further. There's actually a lot of people that have him ranked higher. I still do think there are a lot of risks with him, so I'm not going to take him any higher. I will take Joe Burrow ahead of him and Kyler. I totally get it. I can't fault you for taking him above those other guys if you're going to, but I'm personally putting him my quarterback 7. But he's somebody this is kind of around the range where I start looking, and he's somebody who I love because I easily think he could finish as a top 3 quarterback. So Jalen Hurts, quarterback 7, but I'm a huge fan of him this year. Hard not to be, honestly. Next up, we have Mr. Unlimited. Russell Wilson, Denver Broncos. Kind of weird hearing that now, obviously. But I think it's going to be good for him because he's with a much more pass-friendly coach now with Nathaniel Hackett. And I don't know if it's better weapons, but he still has really good weapons with Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Albert O, all those guys. He has good weapons. Javonte Williams, absolute huge fan of him, and even Melvin Gordon. So he has weapons there, and he has the coaching staff. You know, it's hard to know with the first-year quarterbacks, but there's obviously been a ton of success with that in recent years. So it's really not scared me away from him. And over the past decade, he's been a quarterback 1 every single year, besides last year, which was really just due to injury. But he's literally been a quarterback 1 every single year. And I definitely think he's going to do that now. Given the uncertainty with the new team and new weapons and all of that stuff, I don't really want to put him much higher. And we kind of have seen him regress a little bit in the past couple years. So I don't have him in the tier as the next guys. I mean, I probably would put, I don't know. I'll have to look at more of the actual tiers, but I think Jalen Hurts is pretty clearly over him, but I don't know if they're in the same tier or not. Regardless, this is where I take Russell Wilson. I do think he's going to be really good. I like his weapons a lot. I like the offense he's with. He's somebody who I've actually found drafting a lot in leagues this year because he isn't ranked at the quarterback 8. I think he's normally around the quarterback 10 or so. So in a lot of the mock drafts, you'll probably see me take Russell Wilson, and I'm super cool with that. So yeah, Russell Wilson here every single time. Next up is somebody who I had a lot higher, but has slowly fallen, which I'm probably going to regret. So we'll see, but it's Tom Brady. He was quarterback 3 last year. He led the league in passing yards and passing touchdowns. They also have the second most points last year as an offense, and they have one of the top 5 offensive lines per PFF. The big concern with me really is that he lost Gronk, who has been just a steady force since he's been in Tampa. Gronk has been an absolutely massive player for him. Godwin's probably going to miss part of the season, and we don't really know when he's going to be back or if he'll be 100%. So no matter how good Tom Brady is, he's not going to have the same weapons that he has had. So I think there's going to have to be a slight step back, and he doesn't have the rushing upside to make up for that, obviously. So like I had him, I think, around my quarterback 5 or 6 as I started these rankings, but the more and more I've looked through it and thought about stuff, I can't put him that high anymore. I don't think, I think he's another person who this is the area where I start taking quarterbacks because this is who I draft. So I'll end up with him a lot. I think he's going to be super safe, which I love because I'm not normally shooting for the high upside unless it's like someone like Trey Lance, who we'll talk about later. But for the most part, this is kind of people I love. So I love Tom Brady as a consistent quarterback, but I don't think he has the top 5 upside this year. But I'm probably going to eat my words for that. So clip it and come back to me and tell me how dumb I am. I'm not taking him any higher, so whatever. Deal with it. The quarterback 10, I got Matthew Stafford. He was the quarterback 5 last year, but was actually the quarterback 11 in fantasy points per game. That's really just a sign of consistency, or like him playing every single week, whereas he wasn't as good on a week per week basis. So like that's why I don't have him ranked in the top 5 like his end of season finish might indicate. He did have the second most passing touchdowns and third most passing yards last year, so obviously he's going to be super good. Another consistent guy. He has like arguably the best wide receiver in the league with Cooper Kupp, and has Allen Robinson. Cam Akers is there. Tyler Higbee's still there. Everyone's still there besides Robert Woods and Odell Beckham Jr. So obviously there's some worry there. I think Allen Robinson is going to do just fine substituting in for those guys. If you haven't seen me talk about him, go watch my top 20 wide receiver rankings. I talk about him there. I think he'll be a top 20 wide receiver. But Matthew Stafford is just another guy who I don't think has the elite upside, but is going to be a really good quarterback. So I got him right here to finish off my top 10 for quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford. The next person I have is Dak Prescott, who I've flip-flopped a lot between him and Matthew Stafford for 10 and 11, but right now I have Dak. I think the losing of Amari Cooper and not having Michael Gallup to start the season, they didn't really add a whole lot besides a rookie wide receiver in the 3rd round. So he lost a lot of his weapons. Tony Pollard would probably get more opportunity, but regardless, I think he's going to have a step down. He finished last year as a quarterback 7, but was 9 in fantasy points per game. So already right around this range. The Cowboys did have the most points of any offense in the NFL last year. So it's obviously a great offense. He's super talented. Regardless of, he gets so much hate, and I don't think it's necessary. A lot of it's probably because he was with the Cowboys, but I also don't think he's one of the elite quarterbacks. So quarterback 11 is right around where I think he should be. So that's where I'm taking him. I think a bigger conversation to have is the next quarterback, who I have at 12, Aaron Rodgers. Like, I've really struggled where to put him. Part of it is that I'm just I love him. He's been on my team almost every single year the past 3 years in one league, mostly because nobody wants to take him. So he just kind of falls to me in the round like 10, 11. And it's been great because he's won MVP back-to-back years. Obviously, he's ranked this far down because he lost Devontae Adams, who's another arguably the best, as him or Cooper Kupp, I think, for the best wide receiver in the NFL. And we've seen Rodgers, do a lot with not a lot, but I mean, they don't have fucking anybody in this wide receiving core. Christian Watson, they drafted, who I think is super talented, but he seems raw. And Rodgers doesn't normally do that good with rookie wide receivers, so it's hard to know. Maybe they're going to sign somebody else like Odell Beckham or Julio Jones, which I think would help a lot, but nobody's filling Devontae Adams' role. I think Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon will get a lot of that, but it's just not going to be the same. But like, I understand if you want to take him over somebody like Dak Prescott or Matthew Stafford because I think he's so much more talented, but given the weapons around them, I'm just not sure. But that's where I have him here. He also has a top 5 line according to PFF entering this season, so that's a huge upside, and he's goddamn smart. He's going to do the right thing. He won't turn the ball over a lot. So like, I don't know. it's really hard for me to know like how I feel about him. He's definitely somebody who, I mean, I don't really think I'm lower on him. I think this is right around where most people have him, and I get it. But he's so talented. He's fucking Aaron Rodgers. It's hard not to take him. But you got to understand that this is different than real football. But this is also another thing where it's like, if you're depending on the 6 and 4 point league, you can be a little bit more value if he's in the 6 point passing touchdown league versus the 4 point. But regardless, this is where I have him. If you want to take him a little bit higher, go for it. I might too, depending on, what happens. But currently I have him ranked in my quarterback 12. Moving on to my quarterback 13, I have my boy Trey Lance taking over the reins from Jimmy G this year. Just got to do it. If you're going to trade that much for him, you have to do it. He has that crazy upside that like Lamar Jackson when he was going late in draft, all of those kind of Josh Allen, he was going late a couple years ago, all of those guys, he has that kind of insane upside. But like there's so many question marks because we don't know what's going on with Debo. Kittle's hurt a lot. There's just a lot of question marks with him. Luckily, Kyle Shanahan and that whole offense is like a perfect place for him to go. Last year in the 3 games that he averaged over 50% of the snaps played, he averaged 53.6 rushing yards per game. This would have been second in the league, only behind Lamar Jackson, just like showing like how much upside he does have. Like he's going to rush the ball. He's going to have that safe floor. There's going to be weeks where he could not even do well in passing, but finishes a top 5 quarterback because he rushed for 80 yards and a touchdown. It's one of those things where it's like he could be fantastic or he could be terrible. Like we don't really know. He's so raw. He had some of like the least amount of attempts in a college career while getting drafted as like a top 3 quarterback. I don't know the exact stat, but he just does not have a lot of reps, and he needs those reps. So we're really gonna have to see, but his upside is unreal. So that's also like, if you want to take Trey Lance over Aaron Rodgers and Dak Prescott and Matthew Stafford, I totally get it because he has way more upside than them in my opinion. A lot of the times, because I'm going for late quarterbacks and I just need someone to be decent, I'll take people like Aaron Rodgers and Dak Prescott over Trey Lance, but I totally get the upside, and I will definitely have shares of Trey Lance this year. There's no doubt about it. I'm also a Niners fan, so of course I want some, but regardless of that, Trey Lance has the potential to be a top 5 quarterback. It's just very unsure, but definitely is possible. So get it if you can. The next 2 guys are relatively similar. At 14, I have Derek Carr, who he obviously got Devontae Adams. That's why I put him over who I have at 15. But, he's not somebody who's going to finish as like a top 10 quarterback, but he's going to be pretty safe for you week over week. Will definitely have some bad weeks. He finished top 5 in passing yards last year, so he definitely will be good for you, and we'll have a way better offense this year. But they have one of the bottom 5 offensive lines per PFF entering the season, which is always worrisome. But I think with all the weapons they have, he's going to be fine. He's going to be good for you. Not going to be great though. So just manage your expectations if you're taking him. Somebody who's going to be probably a really good streaming quarterback week to week. Similar situation with who I have at 15, which is Kirk Cousins. He has finished at the quarterback 11 the past 2 years, so actually above this spot, but he's just the kind of the same type of archetype where he's just going to be a really good safe streamer week over week. Another great receiving core with Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Not a talent that can really take you to the next level or like take his fantasy value to the next level. So it's another person, just manage expectations, but if you're streaming somebody who's going to be super safe almost every single week and could go on, like Kirk has gone on runs where he's been elite actually for fantasy football. I've actually won plenty of playoff games using him. So huge fan of both these guys, but just not like really someone I'm drafting, or if I really just punt the position and people start taking backups, I'll take them and just figure it out as it goes, but not much else really to say about them. Woo, 15, we did it, y'all. Let's go. All right. So obviously top 15 quarterbacks there. Hope y'all enjoyed. Let me know what you think. Let me know how much of an idiot I am. Where do you think you agree with me? All of that good stuff. I'm probably going to be dropping another mock draft video on Monday. Y'all keep killing those videos. Thank you for that. And then my final ranking video will be coming out next week, which will be my top 15 tight ends. Anyways, drop a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Catch you on the next one. Peace.